All right, so before we do any dissections, it is important to know anatomical directions. So the first thing we're going to do is intermediate and superficial. So intermediate means it's between two structures. So my elbow is intermediate, my wrist and my shoulder. Superficial means it's towards the surface. If you watch a lot of medical dramas, you might hear a superficial cut. Or even if you don't watch medical dramas, you might have heard, it's just a superficial cut. That means it's not very deep, and it's going to heal really easily. So superficial is a shallow cut, superficial cut. So our first plane we're going to talk about, we've got the frontal plane. And the frontal plane goes like this. Right through that part of an animal. The important thing is we're focusing on four-legged animals. I've done this with humans before. It is way more confusing when you throw bipedal or two-legged animals into it. So we're just going to assume everything is four-legged. So we've got the frontal plane. The tummy side is ventral. The back side is dorsal. Think like a dorsal fin. Next, we've got the transverse plane. Cuts like this. Posterior is the tail end. Anterior is the head end. On the flip side, we have caudal and cranial. Now this looks very similar because we still got this transverse plane. But if you point to your cranium, where is it? It's your head. So the cranial side is towards the head. If you remember from our skeletal unit, the caudal vertebrae is your tailbone. So caudal is this tail area, cranial is this head area. It can also be used as a proximity vocabulary. So, for example, you might be describing that something is more cranial or more caudal. But generally speaking, cranial is particularly referring to the head. Caudal is mostly referring to that tail area. So then we have proximal and distal, which is a word I just used. So proximal and distal are used to describe how close or far away it is from the main body. So again, we look at my arm, and my wrist is distal in comparison to my elbow. My elbow is proximal in comparison to my wrist. And it's all about how close it is to my main body. So in this case, here, this is distal in comparison to this is proximal, really close to that main body. And last but not least, we have the sagittal plane, sometimes known as the midline. Lateral is farther away from the midline. Midline is right down the middle. And this here, I will post on Schoology so that you can refer to dorsal, ventral, caudal, cranial, or anterior, posterior. Remember, cranial's head, caudal's tail, anterior's a head, posterior's back, or same as caudal and cranial. Anterior is forward, posterior is back. A lot of people remember that as alphabetically. Anterior is farther in front, posterior is in the back. Dorsal, most people can remember it's the dorsal fin, and ventral is the tummy side. So as I said, I'll post that diagram on Schoology. Have a super fabulous day.